Thank God. This incredible HFY masterpiece found you today. Witness the legend starting now. They thought humans were dangerous until they met the Australian, who shrugged off poison, cold, toxic air, and scared the predators. I have been working at the Galactic Academy orbital station for approximately 14 cycles now, and in that time I have processed the arrival of over 3,000 students from 247 different species. I am Vextel, Senior Administrator of Student Integration, and I pride myself on being thoroughly, completely, and utterly prepared for anything. I have handled methane breathers, silicon-based life forms, students who communicate through bioluminescent pulses, and even that one kid who was technically a hive mind of 17 smaller organisms pretending to be one person. Nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, surprises me anymore. Or so I thought, until the day I received the notification about our first human exchange student. The message arrived on a completely ordinary morning. Third rotation, just as I was enjoying my nutrient paste, which tastes exactly like sadness mixed with bureaucracy. But that is beside the point. The file downloaded onto my data slate, and I scanned through it with the kind of casual disinterest that comes from reading thousands of identical forms. Species, human, planet of origin, Earth, solar system, some backwater area near the outer rim that nobody really pays attention to, recently achieved faster than light capability, so they qualified for the student exchange program. Standard stuff. Real name, Flynn O'Riley. Region of origin, Australia. Now here is where things get interesting. Or rather where I should have paid more attention. See, the file had a little note attached from the Terran Education Liaison, and it said, and I quote, "Please note, student is from Australian region. Cultural differences may apply. Recommend extra patience." At the time I figured this was just typical human over-caution. They are a new species to the galactic community, probably worried about making a good impression. How different could one region of their planet be from another? Spoiler alert, very different, extremely different, horrifyingly different. Flynn arrived on the morning transport from the Sol system, and I went to meet him at Docking Bay 7, with my standard welcome package and my standard welcoming smile, which I have been told looks pleasant on most species, but apparently terrifies the Globaxians. But they are terrified of everything, so that hardly counts. The airlock cycled open, and out stepped this human wearing what I would later learn was called a tank top and board shorts, which seemed wildly inappropriate for a space station maintained at a carefully controlled temperature of 15 degrees Celsius. He was tall, probably around 1.8 m with sun-bleached hair that stuck up in 17 different directions, and skin that had been turned a golden brown by what must have been excessive solar radiation exposure. He carried a single bag that looked like it had been through a war, covered in patches and stickers with phrases I did not understand, like "no worries, mate," and "yeah, nah." "G'day," he said, and his voice was loud, cheerful, and had this accent that made every word sound like it was sliding sideways out of his mouth. "You must be Vextel, yeah? Pleasure to meet you, mate." He stuck out his hand, and I stared at it, because while I had read about the human custom of handshaking, which involves gripping each other's manipulator appendages and moving them up and down in a gesture of goodwill that seems mildly threatening if you really think about it, I was not quite prepared for the enthusiasm. I extended my primary manipulator, and he grabbed it and shook it so vigorously that my vision receptors rattled. "Welcome to the Galactic Academy orbital station," I managed to say, trying to maintain my professional composure while my arm was being subjected to what felt like a minor earthquake. "I trust your journey from Earth was pleasant." "Yeah. Nah, it was all right," Flynn said, which I would come to learn is Australian for "it was fine," but I am going to downplay it. "Bit long. Yeah, but I slept through most of it. Anyway, this place looks mad. Where's my room? I'm going to dump my stuff, and then check out the rest of the station if that's cool with you." I blinked. all three of my eyes in sequence, which is what my species does when we are processing unexpected information. Yes, we do have an orientation schedule prepared. There are safety briefings, cultural sensitivity workshops, a tour of the academic facilities, meetings with your academic advisor, and then we have scheduled a welcome dinner with the other exchange students, which will give you time to acclimate before you, as you say, check out the station. Flynn laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that suggested he thought the entire concept of scheduled orientation was hilarious. Yeah, nah, orientations are a bit boring, yeah? How about you just point me in the right direction and I'll figure it out as I go? That's how we do things back home. Besides, I'm not going to learn anything sitting in a lecture hall that I won't learn better by just walking around and talking to people, right? This was not protocol. This was the opposite of protocol. Protocol was my life. Protocol was what kept 3,000 students from different species, with different biologies, different cultural norms, and different environmental requirements from accidentally killing each other or starting interstellar incidents. Protocol was sacred. Mr. O'Riley, I began, using my most authoritative administrator voice, the one I reserve for students who think rules are merely suggestions. The orientation process exists for your safety and the safety of others. There are sections of this station that are not compatible with human biology. There are species whose cultural practices might seem offensive. Without proper context, there are emergency procedures you need to understand. Surely you can appreciate the importance of being properly informed. Flynn grinned at me, and it was the kind of grin that made me deeply, profoundly nervous. Mate, I grew up in a country where half the animals can kill you. The sun is actively trying to give you cancer, and the ocean is full of things that want to eat you or sting you or both. I reckon I can handle a space station. But hey, if it makes you feel better, how about you walk with me and tell me the important stuff as we go? That way I get the info, you get to tick your boxes, and we both win. Sound good? And that, right there, should have been my first warning sign. Because Flynn O'Riley from Australia was not just a student. He was a force of nature wrapped in casual confidence and an accent that made everything sound either like a joke or a threat, and sometimes both at the same time. I looked at him, at his completely inappropriate clothing, her music, at his battered bag, at his grin that suggested he had never met a rule he could not bend, and I made a decision that I would come to regret approximately 47 times over the next several weeks. Very well, I said, and I started walking toward the residential sector, already composing my resignation letter in my head. Flynn fell into step beside me, completely unbothered by the fact that he was on an alien space station millions of kilometers from his home planet, and said, "So, what's the food like here? Please tell me you've got something better than space paste, because the stuff on the transport tasted like someone liquefied sadness and called it nutrition." I glanced at him. That is exactly what our nutrient paste tastes like, yes. He laughed again. Brilliant. This is going to be fun. No, Flynn. No, it was not. The tour started going wrong approximately 4 minutes after we left the docking bay, which I am fairly certain is some kind of record. We were walking through the main concourse, which is this beautiful open area with bioluminescent panels on the ceiling that cycle through the day and night patterns of various home worlds. Very calming, very peaceful. When Flynn stopped dead in his tracks and pointed at one of the maintenance alcoves. "Oi, what's that little guy doing there?" he asked, and before I could stop him, before I could even process what was happening, he was walking toward the alcove with his hand extended. "Mr. O'Riley, wait," I called out, my voice hitting a pitch that I did not know I was capable of producing. "That is a ZS, the internal spider. They are highly venomous and extremely aggressive when approached by unknown species. Please step back immediately." Flynn, and I cannot stress this enough, did not step back. He crouched down, getting even closer to the creature, which was about the size of a human hand and covered in bristling purple hairs that secreted a neurotoxin, capable of paralyzing most species within seconds. Nah, he's all right, Flynn said cheerfully. Just a little spider, yeah. Look at him. He's more scared of me than I am of him. That is not how fear works. I practically shouted, already reaching for my emergency communicator. That is not how any of this works. The spider, clearly as confused as I was, reared up on its back legs in what is universally recognized as a threat display. Its fangs, which dripped with venom, extended to their full length. Any reasonable being would have run. Any sane being would have called for help. Flynn O'Riley from Australia leaned in closer and said, "Yeah, you're a feisty one, aren't you? Reminds me of the huntsman that lived in my bathroom back home. We called him Gerald. Good bloke, kept the mosquitoes down." The spider, perhaps realizing that it had encountered something fundamentally wrong with the natural order of the universe, slowly lowered itself back down and scuttled away into the ventilation system. Flynn stood up, dusted off his hands, and turned to me with a smile. "See? No worries, mate. Just got to show them you're not a threat." I stared at him. All three of my eyes were open as wide as they could go. My respiratory system was working overtime. That it could have killed you. Yeah. Nah, Flynn said, which I was learning meant the exact opposite of what it sounded like it meant. I've been bitten by redbacks, whitetails, and one time a Sydney funnel web got into my shoe. Still here, aren't I? That little guy didn't even look that dangerous compared to what we've got back home. This was my life now. This was what I had chosen. We continued the tour and I tried very hard to keep Flynn away from anything that could kill him, which on a space station housing 247 different species was essentially everything. We passed a group of Thoraxian students who are these massive insectoid beings that stand about 2.5 m tall with mandibles that can crush steel, and they are generally considered quite intimidating. Flynn waved at them and called out, "G'day lads," like he was greeting neighbors over a fence. One of the Thoraxians clicked its mandibles in surprise. "The human is very small," it said to its companion in Thoraxian, which I can understand but Flynn presumably could not. And yet it shows no fear response. Is it defective? "I can hear you, mate." Flynn called back cheerfully. "And nah, not defective. Just Australian. We grow up around things that want to kill us. So you lot seem pretty chill by comparison." The Thoraxians looked at each other, then at Flynn, then hurried away down the corridor, which was absolutely not the response I had anticipated. Species that consider themselves apex predators do not typically flee from beings 1/3 their size, and yet here we were. By the time we reached the science wing, I had already sent 3 emergency messages to station security and 1 very panicked note to my supervisor explaining that the human was going to give me a stress-induced molt. We were passing by one of the xenobiology labs when the door slid open and out stepped Palmara, our head science officer, who is a Van Larian, has this very calm, very methodical approach to everything. She has 6 manipulator arms, soft purple skin and a voice like wind chimes. Very soothing under normal circumstances. "Vextel," she said, nodding at me, then her eye stalks swiveled to focus on Flynn. "And this must be our human exchange student. Welcome to the station, Mr. O'Riley. I have been very much looking forward to meeting you. Your species biology is fascinating." Flynn grinned. "Yeah, what's so fascinating about us then?" Palmara's eye stalks waved enthusiastically, which is how her species shows excitement. "Well, for starters, your planet's environment is remarkably hostile. The radiation levels, the abundance of venomous species, the extreme weather patterns. It is quite remarkable that you evolved to sentience at all. Most species that develop on death worlds do not survive long enough to achieve space flight. Death world." Flynn laughed. "That's a bit dramatic, yeah. I mean, sure, Australia's got some gnarly stuff, but you just got to be smart about it." Before Palmara could respond, The security channel on my communicator crackled to life and a very irritated voice said, Vextel, why am I receiving reports that a human is attempting to pet a Zarthian tunnel spider and intimidating a group of Thoraxians? Please tell me this is not the exchange student. I closed my eyes, which did nothing to block out the reality of my situation. That is indeed the exchange student, Chief Krafner. I am coming to your location now. Krafner said, and he did not sound happy. Do not let the human touch anything else. Krafner arrived approximately 90 seconds later, moving at a speed that suggested he thought Flynn was an active threat to station security. Krafner is a Dravosian, which means he is built like a tank crossed with a boulder, standing 2 m tall and covered in armored plates that can withstand small arms fire. He has 4 eyes, all of which were currently focused on Flynn with what I can only describe as deep suspicion. You are the human, Krafner said, and it was not a question. Flynn looked up at him and I expected fear or at least a healthy sense of caution. Instead, Flynn's face lit up. Wow, you're a big fellow, aren't you? What species are you? You look like you could bench press a shuttle. Krafner's armored plates shifted slightly, which is what happens when a Dravosian is caught off guard. I am Dravosian. I am Chief of Station Security. I have received multiple reports of you engaging in unsafe behavior. Unsafe? Flynn frowned. Mate, I just said g'day to a spider and some bug guys. How's that unsafe? The spider is venomous, Krafner said slowly, like he was explaining something to a particularly dim child. The Thoraxians are from a warrior culture. You should not approach either without proper safety protocols. Flynn shrugged. Look, I appreciate the concern, yeah. But back home I've got spiders living in my house that could drop a cow. I've swum in water with box jellyfish, which are practically invisible and can kill you in minutes. I've walked past crocodiles that could bite a person in half. A little spider and some big guys with mandibles. That's nothing, mate. That's Tuesday. The silence that followed was profound. Palmyra's eye stalks had frozen in mid-wave. Krafner's armored plates had stopped shifting entirely. I felt my primary heart skip a beat, which is never a good sign. Your planet, Palmyra said quietly, has spiders that can kill bovine-sized creatures and jellyfish that are invisible and lethal, music, and reptilian predators capable of bisecting sapient beings. Well, yeah, Flynn said like this was completely normal information. Plus we've got snakes, sharks, drop bears if you're not careful, blue-ringed octopuses, stonefish, funnel web spiders, magpies during swooping season, cassowaries if you get too close and the sun is constantly trying to murder you because the ozone layer's got holes in it. Oh, and everything in the ocean either wants to eat you, sting you or poison you, and sometimes all three. You learn to be pretty chill about danger when literally everything around you is potentially deadly. Krafner looked at me. Vextel, did your briefing materials mention any of this? No, I said weakly. No, they did not. After the disaster that was the orientation tour, I made the executive decision to take Flynn directly to the cafeteria, because at least food could not possibly cause an interstellar incident. This was in retrospect incredibly naive of me, but in my defense, I had already used up my entire weekly allotment of panic and needed a break. The cafeteria on the station is actually quite nice, all things considered. It serves cuisine from 43 different worlds, accommodates 17 different atmosphere requirements, and has only had 3 minor poisoning incidents in the past cycle, which is well below the galactic average. Flynn walked in, looked around at the various food dispensers and cultural eating areas and said, this is pretty fancy. Where's the good stuff? The good stuff is subjective based on your species' dietary requirements. I explained, gesturing to the human compatible section. Your clear's throat file indicates you are an omnivore with a preference for high protein and carbohydrate intake. The dispensers in Section 7 should provide adequate nutrition. Flynn walked over to section 7, examined the options, and his face did something complicated. Right, so I've got reconstituted protein blocks, synthetic vegetable matter, and something called NutriPaste Extreme. Is this what humans are supposed to eat in space? It meets all nutritional requirements, as specified by Terran Medical standards. I said defensively, yeah, nah. This looks like what I'd feed my dog if I hated him. Flynn muttered, but he grabbed, clear's throat, a tray anyway, and loaded it up with items that looked vaguely edible. He sat down at one of the communal tables, which was currently occupied by a nervous-looking Nari student named Tibix, who is about half Flynn's size and has these large, reflective eyes that make him look perpetually startled. Tibix looked up as we approached, saw Flynn, and immediately started to gather his things. I apologize. I did not mean to intrude on your meal. I will relocate to another table. Nah, mate, you're good. Flynn said, sitting down across from him with zero regard for personal space protocols. I'm Flynn. Just got here today. What's your name? I am Tibix of the Nari Holdings. Tibix said quietly, his translator, making his voice sound like whispered wind. I am a first cycle student studying xenobotany. Plants, yeah? That's pretty cool. Flynn started eating his protein block, made a face that suggested he was reconsidering every life choice that had led him to this moment, and then kept eating anyway. So what's the food like on your home world? Better than this, I hope. Tibix's eyes brightened slightly. Oh, yes. My world has the most wonderful fungal gardens. We cultivate over 6,000 varieties, and many of them are bioluminescent. Do you have fungi on Earth? Heaps of them. Flynn said enthusiastically. We eat mushrooms all the time. Course some of them will kill you dead if you pick the wrong ones, but that's half the fun, yeah? Learning which ones are safe. I watched Tibix's expression shift from nervous to confused. Your species consumes potentially lethal organisms for enjoyment. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds bad. Flynn said, laughing. But nah, we eat heaps of stuff that could be dangerous if you're not careful. Puffer fish, which has this toxin that'll paralyze you. Cassava, which has cyanide in it if you don't prepare it right. Elderberries, rhubarb leaves, some kinds of beans. Oh, and we drink ethanol for fun, which is literally a poison, but in small amounts it just makes